In June 1987, Britain voted in a general election, but some of Britain didn't. A quarter of the electorate abstained, and many of these non-voters were young people unimpressed by an opportunity to vote for the first time in their lives. They showed little or no confidence in Parliament and its politicians. Before the election, 2/3 of these potential first-time voters said they weren't going to vote. Some of them changed their minds on voting day, but not always with any great enthusiasm. Mick and Jeff went to their polling station in Sheffield in spite of being very sceptical about politics. Like most people, their only active involvement with national politics is to fill out a voting slip and to have their names crossed off the list once every 5 years. The politics and the politicians of Westminster seem very distant from the daily concerns of finding a job and a future in a city like Sheffield with its dying coal and steel industries. And yet these young people aren't apathetic. It's just that they don't trust the politicians to make any difference. Political arguments and debates, as conducted by members of Parliament, often appear to be incomprehensible and meaningless slanging matches.
They always at each other's throats all the time, and that's what gets me mad. You'll sit here and, you know what I mean, they at each other all the time, and it gets really boring. It's come out with the same rubbish every time, don't they?
Yeah, so
you've done this, you've done that.
Slagging each other off for petty little things. It depends on the politician, doesn't it? You can see a politician when he's lying, you can tell, can't you? I mean, like, say an interview, a professional interview, and he says something to him, and you could tell it on the face that they don't want to answer a question, because they know that they're going to put themselves in jeopardy, or, God, I can't answer that. I can't tell people that, do we vote for us or something like that, you know what I mean? They'll get around it.
I think what you've got to try and do is be ordinary. If you're a politician, you've got to, you know, put yourself in other people's spot. And be like them. Yeah, come down to their level. You can just tell where they look and the heights. You can tell they're higher status than ordinary people.
The thing that comes off politicians is one that they make fine speeches and fine sentiment and statements when they're canvassing on the doorstep, when they're local, when they're trying to get that position in like Parliament. But once they get down there, it's a cushy way of life, and you get a bit of a directorship here and a bit of this and a bit of that, and it's very easy to forget where you've come from and also to forget everything you said. Politics is everyone's day-to-day life, and what we need to do is to build up political campaigns that go on outside Parliament, not just leaving it to the people that you stick a cross next to their name and leaving them to get on with it, but actually taking a role and getting involved day after day after day for every year. And the only way to do that is to get involved in politics yourself. I'm from the Labour Party. Would you be interested in joining the Labour Party? Have you ever thought about getting involved?
No, not really. I'm not that interested in joining the Labour Party, to be honest, because I disagree with the vast majority of the policies which they've been putting forward.
Yeah, you're actually in the Tory Party?
Yes, I am. I've been a member for the past 4 years.
Yeah.
So what do you feel that the Conservative Party possibly offers young people when there's 4 million unemployed, people can't get a job, people have to go on YTS schemes, people can't even get into education anymore because the Tories are trying to privatise it?
Well, I disagree with that, actually.
How can that be offering young
people
anything?
No, I would disagree with that, because surely what you ought to be looking at as well as, if you analyse the election figures in the 18 to 24 age bracket, which is a significant age bracket, the Conservatives actually beat the Labour Party.
2/3 didn't vote.
So whose fault is that?
Doesn't that worry you?
The Tories,
Hold on,
who breed apathy amongst
just because people didn't vote for us doesn't mean it's our fault. Sure, it's the fault of the Labour Party for not offering policies to young people as well, which are attractive to young people.
Over the years, there's been a whole build-up of cynicism about politics and politicians in general. I mean, politicians haven't exactly inspired young people over the years to actually get involved and to trust them or to believe in them.
Education, that's something you want to take away. You want to make it a right for the privileged, a right for people who can afford to pay for it. The majority of working class people in this country cannot afford that, and that's what you're attacking.
If young people see other individuals in leading positions actually standing up on principles and on convictions and putting themselves on the line, then young people will will be inspired by that and will think, yeah, no, there's someone who I can believe in, who is telling the truth, who's willing to do what they said.
That's what you're doing. That's what you're doing.
Sir John Betjeman once described the Hallam area of Sheffield as the prettiest suburb in Britain. Its affluence is in sharp contrast with the rest of the city, whose prosperity, based on traditional industry, has largely disappeared. Hallam is the only one of the 5 Sheffield constituencies to return a Conservative Member of Parliament. Socially and economically, it's a natural habitat for these young Conservatives, some of whom have already started their professional careers. In their view, if youth is apathetic about politics, it's not because of the system, it's because young people are put off by the ideas of the left.
Apathy is of great concern, not only among young people, but among all people. Because what does happen is that you're apathetic people. If you actually say to them, do you want your children to go off to school and be taught a positive attitude towards homosexuals? You know, boys taught to play with dolls' houses and girls to want to be mechanics. They shy away in horror.
People vote Conservative is because they want freedom of choice, freedom to choose whether they want to pay for the child's education or whether they want to have a state education.
Is it a real question of choice, though, if there are only some people that can make that choice and most people can't?
I think quite a lot of people can make that choice. As I said before, a lot of people perhaps will choose to go out to the pub every night and have a few pints of beer. Instead of doing that, they could put the money into a private health scheme or towards a scheme where they can pay for the children to have private education.
For these young Conservatives, politics is basically about choice, whether the issue is one of health or education or even unemployment.
I think the whole idea of the Conservative ethos is that you've got to go out and work for a job. So the people are going to sit back and wait for somebody to come along and give them a job. You know, I don't think the Conservatives do offer them a lot, and I don't think they're ever going to vote for us. But what we are showing, and I think increasingly accepted, is that there are jobs there, there's jobs to be done, if people want to get up and do them.
I do want to work, but I just cannot get a job. I cannot get the work. If I could get the work, I'd work. They're all right sat there in their designer suits in Westminster saying this is good for you, this things aren't good for you, but they don't realise what it's like. They've probably been brought up in a different way to me. They've been through private school, they've been to university and college. They've been brought up in a time where everybody worked. They don't understand what it's like. Because when you're on YTS, you seem to be branded. It's like having a sticker on your head. I'm on a YTS. You're looked on as if you're inferior to anybody else. They just don't understand.
I think they do understand, it's just that they don't care. It's just that they're not bothered. As long as they're like getting their money in, they're not bothered about anybody else.
These YTS trainees were 10 years old when the last Labour government was voted out of office. Not surprisingly then, criticism of politicians in general tends to lead directly to a criticism of Conservative policies.
They look after the ones with the money, the people that can afford private health and all that lot. I mean, the privatised health service next, won't they? They don't do much for people like us. They haven't got any money, that rely on health service and everything. And they don't seem to be putting anything back into industry.
The industrial decline of Sheffield and other cities has led to pessimism about the economy and about national politics, particularly among young people. So it's often smaller scale community issues that provide opportunities for political activity.
The main issue involved is the fact that there's been an empty room down Chapeltown lying idle for about 2 years, in the same time that the City Council has actually promised youth facilities for the area. We've got them.
For these young Liberal Democrats, the search for premises for a youth club provides a focus for campaigning and organising among local young people.
Giving them out. So the important thing is to get out some sort of youth mailing to hand out in the streets to make the young people who probably don't know about the facts about this room being lying idle and the fact that we're being promised these facilities. So, do you want to have a look through there, Peter, and find some sort of artwork to head a leaflet?
Yes.
Alan, Anthony, what sort of size do we want for this leaflet?
And if you want to come along to a public meeting tonight, at 8 o'clock in this place here, in the drop-in centre, you can air your views and speak to some of your Liberal Alliance representatives, or as I say, represent you in this area.
Take the leaflet that you've been handing out today. I've seen, I'm not exaggerating, I see this sort of thing all the time in politics. There is absolutely nothing new about it. And if you really think that this is going to influence those people in Sheffield Town Hall, then you're living in a fool's paradise. I think it's a tragedy that maybe the only way you will get attention is to when actually campaigning takes place of a physical nature, like civil protest. But I think we are in that type of society where we politicians respond more likely when you come and cause chaos in the council chamber than what we respond if you have a nice orderly meeting.
So you calling for us lot to go down the council chamber and cause a riot or something? You're calling for people to go to the streets and instead of fighting with words, fighting with their fists then?
No, I'm not, and I wouldn't like to sort of lead you down that road to think that. I would like to think that the democratic system worked in such a way that would encourage you to follow the democratic road in achieving things and getting things done for yourselves. But I am fearful, and I am aware that too often it fails you. Now that's me speaking as a person who passionately believes in democracy.
2/3 of young people given the opportunity to vote at a general election don't take that opportunity because they distrust and despise politicians. Like they distrust and despise other, if you like, respected people in society, such as the headmasters at school, the careers officers, if you like, who are seen by young people as failing them time and time again. I mean, if you look back to, say, 1980, when the recession started biting hard, you look at everybody in this room left school before, around then and after then, if they've left school, and they've had nothing. They've been faced with a country which has now gone from having a big manufacturing base to becoming a country that sells beef burgers, and that is not in a way of being nasty about it, that's being perfectly honest. And they see that as saying, what a world to live in, there's nothing here. What's the point in fighting? What's the point in shouting? We're going to get nothing. And you say, have direct action, get yourself down the council chamber, do this, that and the other, or sign a petition, or get your leaflets out. I think you'll be met on the doorstep with apathy every single time. Yeah, that's
right. Political apathy can be a product of distance, cultural, social, even geographic distance from Westminster and the politicians. We arranged for a group of young people to travel from Sheffield to the House of Commons so that they could put their views to a Member of Parliament. Some young people have already become cynical about politics, while others, from a variety of political standpoints, retain an idealism, a vision of more participation in the political process.
I personally think, right, I want more democracy. I mean, it's all right voting for a party and they get in, whatever. You give them carte blanche to do whatever they want for 4 years. I personally think there should be more referendums and more voting on lots of things like nuclear weapons and lots of things like unemployment and lots of things like licensing laws. I think there should be more referendums, some like monthly kind of votes and things like that. I think there should be more voting power, more democracy, more kind of sharing of power. And I think what we've got now is okay, but we need a lot more.
Single issues.
On single issues, because a lot of times you buy a manifesto, you buy a policy, bang, that's it. There's no kind of negotiations. It's all in one package.
But what about the person with the attitude of, oh no, not this again?
Well,
you know, don't they ever leave me alone?
They've got that attitude because they've never been allowed the opportunity to express themselves politically.
Surely they've got other things to worry about than something that really won't affect them to a great deal.
Well, politics actually affects everything.
Yeah. I think every time they want to make a decision, made a decision on anything, they should come round to my house and say, Ogy, what do you think? And we'll get together and we'll chat about it.
Yeah, but I can't agree totally with you. That sounds really good, and I could agree with that wholeheartedly. But what I'm trying to put across to you is the point of view that people just sort of aren't interested to that degree, and they're not motivated enough to get up and say, yeah, come round to my house, I want to chat about this, that and the other.
You can motivate people, dead easy. I mean, we can motivate people to buy cornflakes, so why can't we motivate people to change their lives?
I didn't vote at last election because as politics stand at the moment and the parties that are supposed to be representing us, I don't feel that they represent me as an individual, as a woman or as a black woman.
And I sort of feel at the moment now, I'm not wasting my vote because I'm not using it, but it's the fact that I've got, if my views do change, then I know I can use it when the time comes when I feel
I know
ready.
exactly what you mean. Sometimes I feel, what's the point? But until we get kind of, see, at the moment we've got politicians in power, we haven't got people in power. But at the same time, I know my personal view is that I've got a vote, that the vote is precious. People have actually died to give me that vote, and people are dying now in South Africa and all over the place. And Russians would die for the vote, and people like that, and whatever. And we've got something that's been given to us that is precious, and I don't think in any way we can be kind of fickle about it.
Well, I feel that a problem with young people is a lot of them won't vote in any election that comes up, and I think it's because they find politics and politicians especially very boring. You know, they don't offer them anything that you can relate to. I mean, some stuffy guy sitting in Westminster, normally half asleep, isn't really going to do much for me. What people really require is, I mean, if I ask somebody a question, I'd like a straight answer. But politicians don't do that. They like to flirt around the issue, and they like to try and put themselves in the best light.
Well, I agree and I don't agree. Yes and no.
Oh, there you are.
The idea that somehow all politicians are the same is often thought to be a profoundly cynical attitude, and yet there's one sense in which it's largely true. Regardless of which party they're in, all the MPs are confident that they're in a very good position to represent the interests of their constituents. In that sense, at least, they are all the same.
What do you think of us lot?
Well,
say what you think.
It's quite alien, I feel, really. I mean, down here and we're up there, so, and that's the crux of it, really, isn't it?
One of the problems is that they're trying to represent you here. And if they've got to do that here, therefore there's the problem of them being seen about and finding out what's going on in Sheffield or wherever they represent.
But I feel that, like you said, they're representing us here. When they're representing us here, they're coming to Houses of Commons and they're losing contact with the real issues that are going on in their own towns that they're representing. You can pick up a telephone and find out the issues that are going on and things like that. But you don't actually feel or see things as clearly as if you were there.
No, that's true. Just as somebody who's not handicapped can't see things from a handicapped person's point of view as well as a handicapped person, or somebody who's old, or somebody who's out of work. It's actually quite difficult. I mean, I represent a seat in central London, and so I live there, and my children go to school there, and I go shopping there, and we go to the local hospitals and such like. But it is always difficult because there's a limit on the amount of time.
I think most young people feel that they're not being represented here.
Well, you're not, in the sense that most people who are most people in here are considerably older than you. There are a few exceptions, but I'm sure you do feel that sort of boring old gits like me, age 47, aren't really understanding your problems or the world as you see it. But I don't think we should think it's just something that's happened now and very recently, and there's a terrible disillusionment compared with the good old days when everybody was full of idealism and enthusiasm and was joining up and doing this, that and the other. I don't think that's the case. And the fact of the matter is that most political parties, to outsiders, look very bureaucratic and boring, and a lot of talks about keeping to the rules and this sort of thing.
That's a comment I'd like to make, in as much as whenever you look at any party, if you want to be a Conservative or you want to join the Labour Party, you've got to get into the Young Conservatives and you've got to get into the Young Socialists. Then you've got to sort of progress through that system. So, you know, you're kind of stereotyped from the word go. So that means, you know, you seem to lose a lot of your own sort of freedom within that system.
But by joining any organisation, you've got to give up a bit of your independence. I mean, that's the swap everybody makes by joining a band. If you join anything, you've got to sort of draw your horns in a bit for the sake of getting the others with you.
You did that with the not putting in your manifesto that you was going to abolish public schools, when that's what you feel you've compromised?
No, I'm not talking about that sort. I'm not talking about a political compromise. I'm talking about personal compromise.
How far will you compromise?
Well, that depends. If you want to go into an organisation, I mean, I don't think we should talk about, for a minute, about political compromises. What I'm talking about is in terms of if you join any organisation of any sort whatever, you will limit your powers of action a bit.
I think you watered down your policies. I mean, just for instance, take an example, the housing problem in London, and you've got Buckingham Palace for a family that does nothing, and it's there because of a birth. Now, what are you going to do about getting rid of royalty?
Well, the party's policy is to leave the monarchy as it is, as titular head of state. Well, okay, I'm not a true socialist.
Bye-bye.
And most of the party isn't.
But 5:25 when the nurse walked into the waiting room. I apologize. She said the world is closing now.
In Sheffield's Take Two club, with his band Dig Viz Drill, Ogy McGrath is back on his own turf. Creative, energetic, and very much in control.
What am I saying? Captain of silver country. Hey, you can't fight. Hey, you can't flee. But I will not repeat, not go with the flow. The rich white man came on the screen.
It's a long way from what Ogy and many of his generation see as the bland, unimaginative, and largely irrelevant world of Parliament and its politicians.
In my life, a politician has never affected what I thought, what I felt, what I did. Never, ever. In all my life, my existence, have they ever done anything.
I think that's a really good point, because I think that's the problem with young people in politics, because you've got all these men set up at Westminster in their grey suits and their ties, and they're all doing very well, thank you, and they're not talking to us as young people, and I think you're right, and I think that's what we have to take the initiative.
They do represent the views of young people, seeing as we voted for them.
Yeah, they're all coming from the same place, though. You look at the top people in the industry, the top people everywhere, right down to the top people in politics. You're looking at people who are coming from Oxbridge and all the public schools, even the socialist MPs.
Yeah, the only reason to do that is to get involved yourself and to get in there and change things.
Right. I mean,
you can't say from the outside, yeah, you have to go in.
Yeah, I know, but the
you can't
fact of the matter
say
is...
politicians don't represent me. Look at them. They're all Oxbridge and all that sort of thing. But the only way you can change it is to get in and get
politicians
involved
can
yourself.
change our lives. Politicians can, if they really believe in kind of freedom something, they can change our lives. I mean, I'm saying to you now, politicians, we're not the apathetic people. Politicians are the apathetic people. They're aloof, they know nothing. I mean, when the time a politician came in and had a drink with us? Never, ever. They don't. You do not see politicians. Politicians appear on TV. We don't.
I'm not prepared to sit back and let them do it and say that they can do it right. I want to do it myself.
Let's make programs like this and kick their asses.
But you've made the point there, do it yourself. And you've got to do something yourself.
I do it myself.
No, but you just said
I do it myself as part of the National Organisation of Labour Students, as part of the Labour Party, as part of the
You
Labour Party
can't
Young
do it for
Socialists. And
such
you can do it.
You
That's
can't
how you
do it for
organise. That's
such
where
a
you get your
big
strength
group.
from. You do. You get your strength from working in a big group. People who do the same. People who are going to fight with you.
No, because all you start doing is having an indelible situation, because all you're spreading is the same despondency, because that's all you're talking about is unemployment. If you talk one way, that'll happen. You are what you speak.
Marcus, masses have changed things before. You can't ignore fact. When if you have collective responsibility, then things do get changed. But while you've got your Tory majority down south, things aren't going to change.
I don't think it's down to who's in, what's happening, whether it rained on Wednesday or what happened here. I think you've just got to look at your own thing. I'm back to this sort of look to yourself first, and then other things move with it. I'm sorry, I know you disagree with that.
Look after yourself and don't worry about everybody else.
But the thing is, she's not saying it's easy. She's just giving you an opportunity to do something about it. And I took forward.
It's not possible.
But I was unemployed. I was in the same boat as you. I was unemployed. I was
so 4 million people are going to become self-made businessmen overnight.
I've been a professional musician for over 20 years, right? And my instrument's not needed because of the electronics. I didn't sort of get up and walk up and down Oxford Street with a placard saying down with a synthesizer. I got up and thought, I've got to do something else.
Not everybody can do that, either because of their intelligence or because of the trade they're trained in or the trade they could potentially train in. Now, you have struck on something, okay? That's really good, and that enterprise culture is a valid part of the Conservative government. And I would say that it is one of the very...
Each time I employ somebody, that's one more off the 4 million.
Yeah, I know, but you are not...
And one more.
You're not going to do it.
Then even if I went
down school now, we're like CSC grade 1 in woodwork, they're not going to get anywhere in life whatsoever.
Yeah, you're doing your bit and you think it's worthwhile. But at the same time, just keep a kind of an eye out for other people and that can't achieve.
I don't believe there's achievers and non-achievers. I think there's achievers and people who just don't want to achieve.
Yeah, because they see nothing at the end of that road.
Exactly. They see nothing because they keep talking about nothing being there and believing the press and believing this.
They know there's nothing there. They've been there and they've seen it.
Chances, yeah, we've had a few. Strike out and struggle on that. There ain't nothing we can do, yeah. Alright, situations rising. Time's moving on, yeah. The battles that we fought and the battles that we won. We gotta keep on working till the work gets done. It's up to you. You ain't want to do it all up. It's up to you, yeah. It's up to you.